الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على سيد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In last week's lesson, we concluded by looking at the section of Azan, and I mentioned some virtues with regards to giving Azan. I mentioned some rulings and some examples with regards to giving Azan, with regards to giving the Iqamat, and also with regards to the Ijaba, i.e. replying to the words of the Azan, and how to reply to the words of the Azan and also of the Iqamat as well. So all these rulings were, alhamdulillah, looked at in last week's lesson. Now we're going to begin this week's lesson by looking at the prerequisites of Salah and of Namaz and of prayer. And what I mean by the prerequisites of Namaz, it's basically those conditions which need to be found before you start your Salah and before you start your Namaz. There are certain things which are first inside Namaz, and this is something which we will be looking at probably next week or the week after. But before you actually start your namaz, before you actually say Allahu Akbar, there are also a number of conditions, prerequisites or sharais they are called in Arabic. They need to be found before you start your namaz. If these conditions are missing, then your salah and your namaz will not be good. And I'll give you an example. Just say facing towards the Qibla. So now facing towards the Qibla is a prerequisite of namaz. Now if you were praying salah facing that way or that way, your namaz is not going to be just. Even though the namaz you're reading may be correct and according to the sunnah, but because you're facing the wrong direction, your namaz and your salah is not going to be accepted. So this section which we're going to look at here, they are known as the shara'itul salah, i.e. the prerequisites of salah, those things which need to be found for your salah and your namaz to be valid and for it to be accepted. Now the first text which Imam Khuduri rahmatullah alayhi states or mentions, يجب على المصلي أن يقدم الطهارة من الأحداث والأنجاس على ما قدمنا. So the first condition which needs to be found before you actually start your namaz is that you have to make sure that you are either in the state of wudu, so you're not in the state of, what I mean is that if you are in the state of hadath asghar, in need of wudu, then your salah and your namaz will not be done. Similarly, what may happen is that you woke up in the morning, say for Fajr, and you started reading your namaz, and you didn't realize that actually you had a wet dream, and it was obligatory for you to go for a farz ghusl and a farz ritual bath. So in that situation, if you then start the salah and namaz without going for a bath, your namaz is not going to be accepted and your namaz is not going to be done. So what this particular text is telling us is the very first condition. Before you think about or try to locate where the Qibla is, before you try to locate anything else, you have to make sure whether, number one, whether you're in the state of wudu, whether you've got wudu, and that you're not in need of a bath, i.e. you haven't had a wet dream, hence ghusl becomes compulsory, nothing like that, and also you're in the state of wudu. So all these conditions need to be found before you start your namaz. That's number one. And also part of number one, you have to make sure that there are no impurities and no najas on your clothes and on your body. And we have already looked at this before in great detail, that you have to make sure there's no blood on your clothes. You have to make sure that there's no urine on your clothes. You have to make sure that there's no blood on your body, no kind of feces, no kind of impure things on your body or on your clothes. As I mentioned before, a few weeks ago, that if these things are on your body or on your clothes, and then you start your namaz, your salah and your namaz is not going to be accepted. That is the first condition. You have to make sure that you are in wudu and your clothes, your body, everything is bath and everything is pure. The second condition, very important, number two, وَيَسْتُرُ عَوْرَةً. that you have to make sure that your aura or your satar or the nakedness is covered. Now this word aura, it doesn't mean your private part. It's not just restricted to your private part, I should say. That, okay, I just cover my front part and my back part and that's it. I could then read namaz in my boxers, then my namaz will be done. That is not the meaning of this particular text. But instead, the meaning of this particular text is that a man and similarly a woman, they each have an aura, they each have an area of the body which they have to make sure that that is covered before they start their namaz. Now, what are the aura? What is the aura for the men and what is the aura for the woman? Now, the aura of a man is the area from his belly button up to and including his knees. So the belly button isn't included, but the knees are included. So the area from his belly button up to and including his knees, that is called the aura and that is called the satar. And it is first, it's a condition that when you are reading salah and when you are reading namaz, all that area from belly button up to including your knees and also your backside and the back area as well, all that has to be covered for your salah and for your namaz to be done. With regards to a woman, her aura and her satar is her whole body. Her hair, her neck, her gardan, called in Urdu, all this area she has to cover. Her ears, her breast, her stomach, everything, her whole body is considered an aura except her face, her hands up to her wrist, and her feet up to her ankles. So these three things can be left exposed in namaz for a woman. So when a woman is doing namaz, she doesn't have to do niqab, she doesn't have to wear gloves or anything like that, she doesn't have to wear socks. But besides these areas, everything else she has to cover for her namaz to be done and for her namaz to be accepted. Now let's just look at the woman aura and satar again, because again, sometimes sisters are quite lax in this kind of issue and they don't realize that if you are lenient, if you are a bit lax when it comes to the satar, your namaz is not going to be done. As I mentioned, the hair of a woman, that is her satar and that is the aura. Just say if a woman is reading namaz and just say from a headscarf, 1 or 2 strands of hair come out. So her namaz and salah will break. Just say for example, if a woman is reading namaz and again, a headscarf didn't cover her ears properly and you could see a bit of the inner part of the ears, her namaz will break. Similarly again, if she didn't put her headscarf on properly and you could see the area just below the chin, then that woman's namaz is going to break. Even, as I mentioned, that spreading of the hand is not satar, so that can be left exposed, but it can only be left exposed up to the wrist. So again, if they are reading namaz and their kurta or their kameez, whatever they're wearing, if it kind of, when they go into ruku or sajda and that bit of the arm is exposed for the duration of 3 subhanallah, then their namaz will break. Even like for example, their feet, as I mentioned, it's not a satar up to their ankles. But the area just above the ankle, the shin, if that is exposed, then the namaz will break. So this is a very strict masla that besides those 3 areas, if a woman's body or that part of her body is exposed, her namaz will break. Now let's look at the man's satar. As I mentioned that the man's satar is from his belly button up to and including his knees. Now this takes me on to the ruling, the first ruling which I want to discuss here. And the first ruling is that if a satar is exposed for the duration of 3 subhanallah, then your namaz will break. Okay, so if it's exposed for the duration of 3 subhanallah, so let's say 3 subhanallah takes you say a couple of seconds. So if your satar is exposed for the duration of 3 subhanallah, then your namaz breaks. And if a person intentionally expose his satar area he exposed that area which he was supposed to conceal, but he intentionally exposes that area in salah, then that person's namaz will break straight away without the need of the duration of 3 subhanallah. What I mean by that is, just for example, a woman in namaz, she intentionally rolls her sleeve up. Now, if she did it intentionally, then as soon as she rolls her sleeve up and we could see the satar and the area which she should have concealed, but we could see, then her namaz will break straight away. However, if it was done by accident and so on, then up to the duration of 3 subhanallah, then there is some leeway. Longer than that, her namaz will break. Now this takes on to the very first ruling which I want to discuss. And that is that especially brothers who come to the masjid for namaz and for salah, and you wear trousers and you wear jeans and so on. I'm not saying you shouldn't wear jeans. I'm not saying you shouldn't wear trousers and so on, because I don't expect you to come here with lungis or anything like that. But what I'm trying to say is that when you come to the masjid with trousers, with jeans and so on, make sure that it's fitted in such a way that when you go into ruku, your backside can't be seen. Some people, they wear their jeans in such a way that when they go into ruku, especially like if they're going to ruku and they just got like, let's say, they're wearing a t-shirt, especially happens in the summer a lot, that people, they come into the masjid with t-shirts and jeans on. Probably in the winter, obviously people wearing shirts and they got big overcoats on and so on, so it's not that of a problem. But especially in the summer when they will come with loose clothing, like t-shirts and just trousers or jeans. So what happens is that when you go into ruku or when you go into sajda, you don't probably realize it, but actually your backside can be seen, or that back area can be seen. As I mentioned, the ruling here is that exposed for the duration of 3 subhanallah. And it's obvious that when you are in ruku, you're going to be there for the very minimum 3 subhanallah. Or when you are in sajda, you're going to be there for the minimum 3 subhanallah. So if you are in that position and your backside was exposed, or the area just above the backside around this area, remember I said the satar or the awrah starts from just below your belly button. So even this area as well, below the belly button up to your private part, if that is even exposed as well, then your salah and your namaz will break. It's something which not brothers, they're kind of heedless regarding this issue. They're not really bothered or anything like that. But little they realize that when they come to the masjid, if you're going to pray salah in that particular way, your namaz is not going to be accepted. Okay? It's very important that you're wearing jeans, trousers, whatever, you wear it in such a way that it's going to cover that particular area. Okay, and the best way to do it, either wear kind of like a jumper on top or something thick on top that 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 area around your private part and around your satar will be covered. Because unfortunately what happens is that these jeans which we wear, it's one of those trousers where you can't lift it up. It's not like your izar, like the shalwar kameez, the izar, where you can always lift it up. But with regards to the jeans, you can't lift it up. If you try to lift it up, you just come back down. So therefore, if you go into ruku, there's always going to be that danger of it being exposed. So it's very important that either wear a jubba on top, wear something like a kurta or something like that on top, or just like have a jumper, something where you show that it's going to cover that particular area. So when you go into ruku and such, that particular area would not be exposed. This is a very important masla and very important ruling. Now, another ruling which I need to highlight here regarding the satar is that it's not necessary for that whole area to be exposed for your salah and your namaz to break. If a quarter of the limb of that area is exposed, then your namaz breaks. So even a bit of the area is exposed, your namaz breaks. Now what I mean by quarter of a limb, I'll just give you an example. As I mentioned that for a man, his satar and his awrah is from his belly button up to and including his knee. So from here up to and including our knee, we've got different limbs. What I mean by that is the area below your belly button, the flabby area just below up to your private part, that is considered as a limb. Your penis, that's considered as a separate limb. The testicles, they are considered as separate limbs. The thighs here, they are considered a separate limb, and the thighs here, they are considered separate limbs. Now, what I mean by if a quarter of your satar is exposed, I don't mean a quarter of the whole area. from here to there. I don't mean a quarter of that. But what I mean is a quarter of that limb. So just say, for example, you read namaz in, say, like shorts, like that, one of those 3/4 shorts where, just say, I don't know, you've grown out of them, so it's kind of just covering your knee. So just say when you went into ruku or sajda or something happened where a bit of the shorts got exposed, meaning that there's just a bit of the area above the knees got exposed. So if the area which has got exposed, if it's a quarter of your limb, so even though you may be this much, but because if it's a quarter of your left side here, then your namaz will break. Because when it comes to calculating this quarter, it's not quarter of the whole area, it's a quarter of that particular limb. So if that is exposed, then your namaz will break. So just keep that in mind. And another reason here is, again, some people may say that, well, just say for example, if I'm wearing trousers or something, and it's like ripped all over. Just say like you're wearing trousers. Just say you're reading namaz, it's like say t-shirt and trousers on. So just say the trousers you're wearing, just say it's ripped, meaning like this whole here, this whole here, this whole here, this whole basically everywhere around that certain area. So what will happen in that situation? So the masla is that you will have to count of the estimate, like count the hole or count the area which is exposed, and ask yourself that whether the exposed part is equivalent to a quarter of the smallest limb which is exposed. And if it is, then your namaz will break, otherwise it will not. Okay, now let me give an example regarding Bismillah. Regarding Bismillah, I'll give an example of a woman. It's much easier because obviously her whole body is separate, so it's much easier to understand. This is an example, a woman is reading namaz, say with a burqa. It's like a burqa. Just say she's wearing one of those burqas where basically she's got nothing underneath, so she's just wearing a burqa. So as you know, burqa covers her whole body, and she's wearing a headscarf and she's reading namaz in that particular way. Now just say the burqa she's wearing, there's a patch, say, on her shin. That's what I mean patch, is a ripped area on her shin. There's a ripped area, say, on her thigh. And just say there's a ripped area near her ear, okay, which is showing her ear. Basically, this woman, she's reading namaz in a burqa and with a headscarf. And there's area on her shin which is ripped, area on her thigh is ripped, and there's an area on her headscarf is ripped near her ears where her ears are being shown. So basically 3 areas are ripped here. Now if we were to add these ripped places together, the question we need to ask ourselves that is it equivalent to the smallest limb which is being exposed? So out of the 3 examples are given, which one is the smallest limb? The ear, yes. So we will look at that the exposed area, is it equivalent to 1/4 of the ear? And obviously if it's going to be ripped here, ripped there, even though the ripped area is quite like not that much here, but when you add it up, and then the area which is ripped near the ears, so if altogether it's equivalent to 1/4 of the ears, then her namaz will break. Okay, so that's how we look at it when it comes to holes or things which are ripped from different places. A couple of more rulings with regards to clothing here. One is if a person is wearing see-through clothing. So see-through clothing is in the ruling of being naked, basically. Just as an example, you're wearing, I don't know, some kind of vest or something like that, or some kind of like trousers or some kind of thing, whatever. But basically, you could see directly the skin underneath. So in that situation, that person will not be allowed to read namaz with those clothing. And with regards to tight clothing, so the ruling with regards to tight clothing is that it is permissible to read namaz in that particular clothing, although it's preferable not to. So to wear, say, for example, like jeans again, or something like a vest where you could actually make out the figure of the individual. Like if you wear sometimes like tight jumpers and so on, and you could actually make out the figure, you know, the size of the individual's body and his hips and his curves and so on. So to read salah in those kind of clothing is something which is disliked. However, the salah and the namaz will be just. Now, I'm just going to elaborate on this particular issue here with regards to satar and awrah. And I'm going to look at the issue here regarding hijab, as we touched on women, parda and hijab and so on. So I'll just mention a few things with regards to the importance of hijab. Now, before we come to the exact masla regarding what area or what part of the body a woman should conceal in front of a ghair mahram, someone who is stranger to her, someone who she's allowed to marry, someone who she's not allowed to look at. Before we look at that, I'm just going to mention the different types of satar or the different types of hijab and parda when it comes to other people, when it comes to, say, for example, other females, when it comes to in front of a brother, when it comes to with regards to a husband, and so on. Now, the first ruling we're going to look at is what is the woman's satar or aura when she is private, when she is like by herself, or when she is in privacy. Now, the ruling is that when you are naked, and this applies for men and female, by the way, you shouldn't walk around naked, even at home, even though you know that there's no one in between. Even then, you shouldn't like walk around stark naked around the room. Okay, but instead, even in that particular time, it is necessary and it is wajib that you have at least come the area below the belly button up to and including the knees, the very least that has to be covered. And the reason why we say this is that we should always realize and recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. Even though there's no one there, even though there's no people there looking at our private parts, but even then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. So because of that reason, even when you are alone by yourself in a room or at home, whatever, where you know no one's looking, even in a room where there may be no windows and you know no one's going to be like peeping in through the window, or there's maybe no door or anything like that, even then you shouldn't walk around stark naked, but you should at least cover yourself, and this applies for both men and women. The second situation here is a woman's parda or satar or aura in front of her husband. Like what part of the body she should cover in front of her husband. So the masla is that there is no satar for a woman in front of her husband. And I did mention this before as well, that a woman in front of her husband, she can expose her whole body if she wants. Even though it's against adab and etiquette for her to be completely stark naked in a way where the husband is directly looking at the private parts and so on. But I did mention this before as well, that if the husband is doing this so that he can satisfy his lust and so on, then that would be allowed and that would be permissible. But in principle, it is lawful or permissible for a woman to be totally naked in front of her husband, obviously when it comes to intercourse and for those kind of things. The third ruling here is a woman's satar in front of another Muslim woman. So a woman's satar in front of another Muslim woman. So the masla is, again in principle the masla is, the area below her, or from her belly button up to and including her knee. So that area has to be covered in front of another Muslim woman. Just say one Muslim woman, in front of another Muslim woman, come again, that area below her belly button up to and including her knees has to be covered. Now, again, I'm not saying or I'm not advocating that, or Mufti Sahib is saying that this woman could go and expose her breast in front of her sister or in front of her mother. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in principle that is the area. And again, modesty and haya demands that the woman obviously she covers that particular area as well in front of her, other Muslim women, other kind of female associates, Muslim female associates. She has to cover that particular body as well. But in principle, the fuqaha, the jurists have said that the area from her belly button up to and including her knees has to be covered in front of other Muslim women. The next section here, or the next situation here is, what is the Muslim woman's satar and aura in front of her mahram? Mahram basically means her father, i.e. those besides her husband, i.e. her father, her brother, her uncle, these kind of people who she is allowed to look at, where parda or seclusion or niqab isn't necessary. Now with regard to that, the masla is, the area just below her breast, or you could say from her chest, from there all the way up to and including her knees. Her back, so all her back are considered to be the satr. So the area from her chest up to and including her knees, and all her back is considered as awra and satr. So therefore we can derive that obviously her arms are not considered satr in front of her mahram. So if a woman was to expose her arms, the upper arm in front of her father, in front of her brother, there's no sin in that. Or if she was to expose her hair in front of her father or her brother or her uncle or anyone, again there is no sin in that. Because all these things she could leave exposed in front of her mahram. Again, as I said, in principle, her breast isn't a satar or awra, but again, haya and modesty demands that she doesn't expose that particular part. And even to a certain extent, even like, going out in front of her brother, without a headscarf, again, in some cultures, it may be deemed disrespectful and so on. So there's nothing wrong with that. It depends on the culture in a certain extent when it comes to these kind of issues. So obviously, if the culture or that particular community thinks that it's quite bad for a woman, even in front of her father or brother, to come out without a headscarf, it won't be sin for her, but what I mean is the modesty will demand that she at least covers the headscarf. I'm saying in principle, these areas around the breast, her head, her hair, her face, her upper arms and so on, the area below her knees, i.e. her shins and her feet, these things can be exposed in front of her mahram, such as her brother and such as her father. Now the next masla which we're going to look at, where we need to look at in a bit more detail, is what is the Muslim woman's awra or satar when it comes to a strange man, a ghair mahram. So someone besides the father, someone besides the brother, someone besides the husband. So those people, what is her satar and her awra in front of them? Now, the masla which we need to look at here is something which is called in Arabic as hijab. And when we look through and scour through the Quran and Hadith, we find that there are two types or there are two categories of hijab. The first category or the first type of hijab is that type of hijab which is actually compulsory for both men and women. And that type of hijab is known as lowering our gaze. When you look at it, that is also considered as a form of hijab as well, lowering our gaze, not looking at unlawful women. And this is something which is first for both women and for both men as well. And it's mentioned in Surah Hud, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, first Allah begins, وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ. The Prophet says to the believing women, يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ, that they should lower their gaze. And then the next verse afterwards Allah says, وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, and also say to the believing men that they should lower their gaze as well. Now lowering your gaze is something which is first, compulsory, you have to do. Whether it's a woman or whether it's a man. Woman shouldn't be looking at a strange man. The Jews are kind of